In 2018, scientists drilled a 2-millimeter hole into a 10,000-year-old skull. They pulled out bone powder. They sequenced the DNA inside it, and what came back didn't match a single assumption anyone had made about this skeleton for the past 115 years. Everyone had pictured a pale guy, a proto-Englishman, someone who'd look right at home in a museum diorama next to a thatched hut. What the DNA actually said was dark brown to black skin, blue eyes, dark curly hair, a combination that, in the scientist's own words, doesn't really match anyone you'd see walking around today. This is the story of Cheddar Man. And it's a story about how confidently wrong an entire culture can be about its own ancestors for over a century without a single piece of solid evidence to back it up. He was found in 1903 in Gough's Cave, in Cheddar Gorge, in Somerset, in southwest England. Workers cutting a drainage trench hit bone. What they'd found turned out to be the oldest, nearly complete human skeleton ever discovered in Britain. A man who lived around 10,000 years ago in the Mesolithic period, not long after the last ice age had finally let go of the island. For the next 100+ years, Cheddar Man sat in the Natural History Museum in London, studied on and off, and reconstructed it more than once. And every reconstruction made the same assumption: pale skin, because obviously he was from Britain. Britain is cold, overcast, low on sunlight. Pale skin is what's supposed to show up in low sunlight climates, because paler skin absorbs UV more efficiently and helps the body make vitamin D. It's a real evolutionary mechanism. It's just not what happened here, not yet. Not 10,000 years ago. Before we even get to 2018, there's a strange detour worth knowing about. Back in 1996, a geneticist named Brian Sykes at Oxford extracted a small piece of usable DNA from Cheddar Man. Not a full genome, just mitochondrial DNA, the kind passed down only through the mother's line. Sykes then tested local residents in the village of Cheddar to see if anyone still carried a matching maternal lineage, purely as a curiosity. He found one. A local history teacher named Adrian Target had mitochondrial DNA that lined up with Cheddar Man's, meaning they shared an unbroken maternal line going back 10,000 years. Target had, at the time, taught kids about early Britain without knowing he was directly descended from possibly the most famous skeleton in the country. It's a strange, almost novelistic detail on its own, but back then, mitochondrial DNA couldn't tell anyone what Cheddar Man actually looked like. That technology was still decades away. The full picture didn't arrive until 2018, when a joint team from University College London and the Natural History Museum finally sequenced Cheddar Man's entire genome, not just a maternal fragment, the whole thing. Ancient DNA is famously hard to work with. It degrades, it fragments. Most environments destroy it within a few thousand years. But caves are cold, dry, and stable. And that's exactly the kind of environment that can preserve genetic material far longer than it has any right to survive. Researcher Selena Brace, who worked on the project, later said the cave gave them a nice, cool, dry, constant environment. The reason there was anything left to sequence at all. Once they had the genome, they ran it through a forensic prediction tool, the same category of tool police forensics labs use to estimate what an unknown suspect might look like from DNA alone at a crime scene. It doesn't give you a photograph, it gives you probabilities across defined categories for things like skin pigmentation, eye color, and hair color. For skin pigmentation specifically, the tool sorts results into 5 categories, from lightest to darkest. Cheddar Man's markers placed him in one of the 2 darkest categories, and specifically ruled out the 2 lightest ones. The result was reported as dark to black skin pigmentation. His eye color came back blue, his hair dark and curly. 2 Dutch paleo artists, Alphonse and Adrie Kennis, then used the skull's exact measurements combined with those DNA results to build a full 3D facial reconstruction, the actual physical model that ended up on the news around the world. Dark skin, high cheekbones, piercing blue eyes, coarse black hair. Chris Stringer, the museum's head of human origins research, who had personally studied this skeleton for over 40 years, said the finished model was something he genuinely never expected to see confirmed in his lifetime. Here's the part that made this bigger than just one skeleton. Cheddar Man wasn't a fluke. His genetic profile lines up closely with other Mesolithic-era remains found across Europe, in Spain, in Hungary, in Luxembourg. All from the same broad population researchers call the Western hunter-gatherers, people who moved into Europe at the tail end of the last ice age. Tom Booth, one of the researchers on the project, put it simply, this wasn't just one unusual guy. Most of that entire population probably had dark skin and light-colored eyes, whether blue or green, alongside dark hair. Cheddar Man wasn't the exception. He was closer to the standard. So when did pale European actually become the norm? Later, significantly later. The gene variants responsible for lighter skin in modern northwestern Europeans didn't show up with the first humans who settled the continent. They arrived in 2 later waves of migration, one tied to farmers moving in from the Near East, another tied to pastoralist populations from the Pontic Steppe, the grasslands north of the Black Sea. On top of that migration, there also seems to have been ongoing natural selection over roughly the last 9,000 years, gradually favoring lighter skin, likely tied to the same vitamin D and sunlight pressure people had assumed applied to Cheddar Man from the start. It just took thousands of years longer to actually show up genetically than anyone had guessed. And despite all of that migration and genetic turnover, Cheddar Man's population didn't vanish without a trace. Researchers estimate that around 10% of native British ancestry today still traces back to his population specifically, meaning the first Brits, dark-skinned and blue-eyed, are still genetically present in the country's population all these thousands of years later. They didn't get replaced, they got mixed in. Now, the responsible version of this story includes a caveat, and it matters. This wasn't a photograph. It was a probability-based genetic prediction built from a forensic tool working with incomplete ancient DNA. The Natural History Museum's own researchers were upfront about this in their published FAQ. Some of the underlying genetic markers for hair and eye color were low coverage, meaning the data was thin in places. The skin pigmentation prediction had some loci that were fully missing from the recovered DNA, forcing the model to estimate around those gaps. The museum's own language was most likely, not certain. What they could say with confidence was that his skin pigmentation definitely wasn't in the lightest categories. What exact shade within the darker end, down to the pixel, carries more uncertainty than the viral headlines let on. That caveat became its own minor controversy. Some critics, writing well after the initial coverage, argued that the public was handed a single definitive face and a single definitive headline, when what the actual science supported was a range of probabilities with real margins of error. It's a fair, useful critique of science journalism in general. not really a rebuttal of the underlying finding. The core result, that Cheddar Man's DNA rules out light skin and points strongly toward dark pigmentation, has held up. What the criticism actually targets is the gap between here is a probability distribution across 5 pigmentation categories, and here is a photorealistic bust with one specific skin tone, which is a real gap and worth being honest about on camera. The other kind of controversy was less about methodology and more about what people wanted the finding to mean. Tom Booth, one of the researchers, said the discovery showed that the racial categories people apply today are recent cultural inventions, not something that maps cleanly onto the deep past. That's a defensible scientific point about population genetics. It's also the kind of line that gets picked up, stretched, and fought over well outside the original research paper by people on every side of an argument that has nothing to do with ancient Mesolithic hunter-gatherers and everything to do with present-day identity politics. The DNA doesn't know or care about any of that. It just says what it says. Strip away the politics and the headline chasing, and what's actually left is a clean, well-supported scientific result. For at least the first several thousand years that anatomically modern humans lived in Britain, they very likely had dark skin, and light-colored eyes were already present before light skin was. That single detail, that eye color diversified before skin tone did, surprised even the researchers. It's not the order most people would have guessed evolution would take. It also means every single reconstruction of Cheddar Man made before 2018, every waxwork, every illustration, every museum display for over 100 years, got it wrong. Not through bad science exactly, through an unexamined assumption. Nobody had DNA to check the assumption against, so nobody did. They filled in the blank with what seemed obvious. British climate, therefore British-looking skin, therefore pale. It felt so self-evident that nobody flagged it as a guess. It took drilling into a skull and reading actual genetic code to find out the guess had been wrong the entire time. Cheddar Man is still on display today in the Natural History Museum's Human Evolution Gallery in London, not far from where his DNA was extracted. The reconstructed model, dark skin, blue eyes, curly black hair, stands next to him now, a permanent correction to 100 years of confident, well-meaning, completely unverified guesswork. Somewhere in the village of Cheddar, there's still very likely a distant relative of his walking around, carrying the same maternal line 10,000 years later, with no particular reason to know it unless somebody ran the test.